rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Well, before the show got started, apparently Rumble, for whatever reason, had two active chat bot things that popped up. But anyway, chat areas, and thankfully, not everybody got over on that other side. But over here on the live one, the one that I actually put in, we were talking about bar names, because apparently the name Shenanigans kicked off a conversation about bar names, saying that would be a great bar name. And then, of course, Buddy had to go and point out there's actually two already in North Carolina, one in Charlotte and one in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Sorry, there was one in North Carolina and South Carolina. And, yeah, no, it's not Dark Brandon. Anyway, and so then, of course, Nana put in that Whiskey Musings would be a great bar name. Yeah, you got me thinking again. I've always wanted a bar. My uncle owned a bar. He owned one in Illinois. He had it for many, many years. And it was just, it was a tavern, really. It wasn't really a bar. It was a tavern. But he owned it for many, many years. And yeah, it's kind of I don't know, maybe it's in my blood, I guess. I have no idea, but I've always wanted to own a bar. So anyway, don't get me started. All right, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Tonight, we're going to be listening to the NJY Camps Girls Youth Band reciting the Pledge of Allegiance for us. So if you are of mind, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one. If not, place your hand over your heart and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah!
All right. And thank you, ladies, for submitting that wonderful version of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance played here on the program, it's really, really, well, I consider it simple and easy, but some people, it may be a little bit more difficult. But anyway, the point is that all you have to do is record yourself performing the Pledge of Allegiance or reciting the pledge in your style. And once you have that audio, take that audio file, that digital file, and attach it to an email. Then send it off to fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. And yeah, I'll get you into the rotation. Don't worry about the format. I can pretty much handle just about any of them. And no problem with that. You can send that in. And we'll take care of it. I will take care of it for you. All right. Tonight being Saturday, first of all, it is a whiskey drinking night. And so tonight I am drinking the Easy Rider Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, aged 4 years. As you can see, I had to back it off so you guys could see that. But anyway, and that is in the We the People Lucky Shot USA glass. That's the Lucky Shot USA with the bullet going into the glass like this. I think they are now starting to become one of a kind. But anyway, there it is. There's that nice amber liquid in there. And with that is the Stones that I always drink with. And yes, 3 Chevy always comes in and says it takes stones to drink with Rick. And that's right, it does. Those whiskey stones make it cold because I put them in the freezer. Doesn't last very long, but that's okay. I'm all right with that. Okay. So, tonight's sponsor is the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, all you need to do is go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Check this thing out. It's got 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are tear and water resistant. And they do not skimp on binding. That isn't just glue here, folks. That is a stitch that goes all the way through the pages and the leather. It's got a 100-year warranty against workmanship and material defects, such that if something goes wrong with it, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has ensured that the information inside will get you your civics badge through Scouts. Using this as a primary source document. Sorry, buddy just posted something in the Rumble chat that's making me laugh. Anyway. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online and get your copy today. Great stocking stuffer. Just saying, you can piss off your liberal friends and you can get cheers from your conservative folks. All right here. Grab yours today at constitution.americanperspective.online to support the show. And also go and check out the IOTC's other course material and all their information there. I do appreciate them allowing me for being a affiliate of theirs. Great stuff. All right, let's go ahead and get things kicked off with our fan favorite first segment of the night, which of course is On This Day in American History. And for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac. It is written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb, chock full of all kinds of factoids and pieces and bits of information about this wonderful country that we call home. And tonight we're talking about October 12th, so we're going to be talking about Columbus Day. Christopher Columbus had all kinds of trouble finding a crew to venture across the Atlantic. No one wanted to sail into that sea of darkness. Somehow, he scraped together 90 men. When the tiny Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria finally set out, they passed an erupting volcano. The terrified sailors took the billowing smoke and flames as an evil omen. Columbus calmed their fears and persuaded them to sail on. After several days, the compass began to vacillate away from the North Star. The confused men fell into a panic, but their admiral convinced them to keep going. The winds blew day after day to the west, pushing them across the sea. The crew began muttering, "What if the winds always blew west? How could their ships ever sail back to Spain against them? They met thick stretches of green seaweed, which the men feared would entangle their rudders. Who knew what monsters lurked in these ocean forests? They cast dark scowls at Columbus. Every so often, someone cried, "Land!" But it was only low clouds hugging the horizon, a mirage of the sea. The crew plunged into despair, but Columbus sailed on. They saw birds overhead, which gave them hope. They tried following their direction, but saw nothing. The sullen crew neared mutiny. There was talk of throwing the admiral into the sea and forcing the pilots to turn around. Columbus, refusing to flinch, willed his vessels on. Then came the dawn that raised an island from the swells. Columbus had reached a new world. The day was October 12th, 1492. Christopher Columbus has been subjected to criticism in recent years, some deserved, some not. Regardless, today is a good day to honor the courage and perseverance that once conquered the fear of the unknown. And that is today's On This Day in American History. And just think, if he'd have backed off and went somewhere else, just think of what would be the case. I mean, we know there were people here, but they weren't the European settlers that would have come across had he decided to turn around, had he gone with his crew and done what they wanted him to do rather than pushing on. Yeah, that would have been definitely would have been interesting. It probably wouldn't have, I mean, I'm sure we would have been discovered again later, but it wouldn't have happened in the way that it did. All right. So we know the shenanigans are going to happen. We know the shenanigans are going to happen, folks. We know that the Democrats are going to do everything that they can, and even some things that they may not be able to get away with, in order to try and muck up this election. Well, I didn't necessarily expect some of the overt shenanigans to start so early, but hey, who am I to say what a Democrat wants to do and doesn't want to do? Because, well, I don't think like them. But here, you can take a look in the Federalist. It's already started right here on the left coast. Trump and Vance are apparently missing from Oregon's online candidate list and their voter pamphlets. Once again, this is in the Federalist. You can take a look. There's a photo right here. There's a picture of the front of the voters pamphlet. And right here it lists for president on the partisan candidates, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Chase Olivier, or Oliver, or Olivier, however you want to pronounce it, Jill Stein, and Kamala D. Harris. Really? They're missing. What the? Well, anyway, they're also supposedly missing from the online list. Why? What's the purpose? Now, the voters' pamphlets apparently also do not include their biographies. Now, that one is sort of explainable according to the article because of the fact that the Trump-Vance campaign did not pay for them to put their biographies in there. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be a part of the voters' pamphlet. At least be listed as a candidate. Really? I mean, this is crazy. Now, Oregon's Democrat, of course she's Democrat. It's Oregon. What are you talking about? Oregon's Democrat Secretary of State does not list them as candidates on the office's website or the pamphlets, which excluded them from their biographies. Now, according to the Secretary of State Lavon Griffin Valdez website, it only lists Harris, Kennedy Jr., Jill Stein, and the other person. But yeah, it just doesn't. Under candidates for vice president, the website only lists his running mate, Harris's running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. So according to the secretary's office, that it posted, and they posted this on X, they said that the absent biographies were not a mistake, that Trump and Vance will still appear on the ballots. They said, quote, the Trump campaign chose not to participate. It was not an omission by officials, the office posted. But the Oregon Republican Party said in an April press release that the decision not to submit a statement for the voters pamphlet was made by the Trump campaign earlier this year. Laura Kearns, the Secretary's communications director, told KOIN, which is a television and radio broadcast outlet in Oregon, the Trump campaign did not submit a statement nor pay the necessary $3,500 to appear in the voter pamphlet. Republican State Senator Dennis Linthicum also told the Federalists the Trump campaign chose not to pay the fee. Linthicum is Oregon's Republican nominee for Secretary of State in November. The Trump campaign did not spend the money to file, so he concurred with that. Why they got left off of the information center from the Secretary of State, no doubt, is political maneuvering. So Linthicum is basically saying that this was, even though they didn't pay for the biographies, this was a possible political move, or at least he's alleging that it is a political move by not putting them in at least the listing of who is running for president and vice president. He also doesn't understand why Trump and Vance are absent from the secretary's webpage, but does point out that the subjective rule making with flexible language sometimes allows things like this to happen. Clackamas County Commissioner Ben West, who is a Republican from Oregon's third largest county near Portland, told the Federalists that county voter pamphlets in the state are the most important mailer a candidate could have. West said everyone reviews that around the kitchen table. Everyone marks it up and makes their notes and dog-ears the pages. West said he had not heard the secretary left Trump and Vance off the online candidate list, but called it highly irregular and bizarre. The Federalist, of course, requested comment from both Griffin Valde and the Trump campaign, but haven't received anything yet. There will be further updates, I'm sure, but here's the thing, is that, why would they leave him out of the pamphlet? Because, I don't know about you, but I know that there's a lot of people who look at the pamphlet and only read what's in the pamphlet. They don't even bother to, check out the candidates themselves. They just read what's in the pamphlet, and that's how they make their decision. That's how they make their decision in terms of how they're going to vote. Now, I'm not going to claim that I haven't done that in the past because, let's face it, everybody gets busy. And yes, I have. But the thing about it is that a lot of people don't seem to understand is this race is way too important to just leave it to whatever is placed in that voter's pamphlet. And the fact that this race is so important that it got left out of that pamphlet it's just, I can't even believe that they would do that kind of a oversight. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, another thing that is apparently happening, that isn't happening, that the Democrats claim isn't happening, is we now have another state, not only Oregon, because Oregon, by the way, found, 1,500, I think, roughly. Yeah, more than 1,500 potential non-citizens registered to vote in in Oregon. But we also now have illegals, apparently, that have voted in Maine. Yes, this in Woke Spy. Hold on. There it is. Don't ever get a cat. Anyway, this in Woke Spy. The thing that never happens is happening in Maine. Illegals are voting, according to this. Let's list some of the things that the media and Democrat establishment says there's no evidence for. Well, let's see. The first one being Russian collusion. Democrats claimed Donald Trump engaged in 2016, but Hillary Clinton, of course, arranged for the Steele dossier for that. That President son Hunter Biden's laptop was filled with video images and records showing Hunter doing hard drugs, frolicking with prostitutes, and also, of course, had evidence of his pay-to-play scheme, or influence peddling scheme, actually, is the way that it's really been termed. All of it was true. And then, of course, the last one being that there are zero election irregularities in 2020. That there's no evidence at all, none whatsoever, of this going on. Well, yeah, there's plenty of evidence that's out there. Now, one of the things that is actually starting to take a look at is that Libs of TikTok brought this up, that the Maine Wire, which, by the way, is a fairly new outlet, the Maine Wire uncovered records showing 18 non-citizens billing Medicaid for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then when cross-referenced with voting records, 6 of those 18 were found to be registered Democrats and voted in elections as recently as 2022. Yeah. And of course, that was just out of one small sample, according to Libs of TikTok's claim here. So the Maine Wire did all of the work. They found the evidence documenting that illegal aliens were fraudulently billing Medicaid. That's your tax dollars, by the way. And that some of these illegal aliens were registered to vote, and that they had cast ballots in elections for Democrats, of course, naturally. Here in the Maine Wire, records show that illegal and illegal aliens billing Medicaid, known in Maine as Maine Care, for hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical expenses. They were provided to the Maine Wire by a whistleblower concerned about a potentially fraudulent billing practices at a healthcare provider in Maine. When the identities of the 18 legal and illegal aliens named in the records were cross-referenced with voting records from the Maine Secretary of State, 6 of the individuals were registered to vote. 5 had voted in elections since 2016. And of course, all of them were registered Democrats. The individuals range in age from 35 to 74, according to ssncheck.org. They received their social security numbers at ages ranging from 16 to 58. 4 of the individuals received their social security numbers in Maine, while 1 received their number in Georgia and another one received theirs in California. Yeah, but there's no evidence. No evidence whatsoever. Anyway, it's not happening, but it's good that it is, according to the Democrats. So that's just, this 2024, I got to tell you, this is going to be wild. It's going to be wild. All right. So apparently, you recall I talked last episode about how Donald Trump said that stupid people are the biggest threat to democracy. And apparently that kind of carried through to some folks because there was an article by Kylie Griswold in the Federalist again, titled "Kamala Harris is Too Stupid to Be President." Well, I would tend to agree with that. But here's the thing: Univision in the piece, Univision hosted a Latinos Ask town hall with Kamala Harris last Thursday, and it was about as airheaded and disingenuous as you would expect. So here was one of the word salads from the very first 5 minutes. And it was a response to a question about the 2 hurricanes that had just decimated the southeast of the country. So here's what she said. Leadership is about understanding the importance of lifting people up, understanding that the character of our country is such that we are a people who have ambitions and aspirations, dreams, goals for ourselves and our families, and are entitled to have a leader who then invests in that. The 2 visions for our country, simply put, are that one is about the future and the other is about the past and taking us backward. And I do believe that the American people are ambitious and aspirational about an investment in the future in a way that we are optimistic while being clear-eyed. Okay. Dumb question, but the question was about the 2 hurricanes that just really, and that, how did a question about 2 hurricanes that just decimated the southeast of America fall into a discussion about leadership and visions for the country? I just, anyway, one voter apparently on the show had observed that Harris was never elected to be the Democrat nominee, but just magically became such when President Biden was shoved off the cliff. And the vice president, of course, responded to that by driving home the point for the umpteenth time that Donald Trump is the unprecedented threat to democracy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound, it doesn't sound like it. So here is the biggest problems with Kamala Harris, of course. She is inarticulate and unlikable. Kamala Harris can't even articulate why she deserves your vote. The entire town hall consisted of the VP dodging questions from concerned voters and talking about, instead, you guessed it, more ambitions, an opportunity economy, taking down transnational crime organizations, and also the best that she can offer to determine how she is different from Donald Trump and Joe Biden is the fact that she is a woman of color. That's it. That's it. Again, keep in mind, she mentioned on The View that she can't think of anything that she would have done differently than Joe in the course of the past 5 years, or 4 years, sorry. So all of this, of course, is just the latest reminders that the second in command diversity hire, which she was, is utterly mindless. Every single one of her policy proposals is an unmitigated disaster, the author writes here. But they also, she also points out that she's never, clearly never internalized the Abe Lincoln aphorism, "'Tis better to be silent and thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt." Yeah. So anyway, she's apparently just dying on the vine. She's just dying on the vine here for all of this, which, you know, again, I mean, we kind of already knew this. But anyway, the author here is also asking the question where she's like saying, I'm a little confused as to about exactly where the Kamala love is coming from, besides her sisters, sorority and soul sisters, of course, in the corporate media and pop culture. Contrary to her attempts to rebrand herself as the change candidate, we've all known Kamala for a while. Have Americans just lost their minds? And they point out the comparison back when Barack Obama popularized his Hope campaign. You know, all of the red and blue posters that became ubiquitous on Democrat lawns. It was clear to Republicans that the voters who lived there just subscribed to a different set of beliefs. You might not have liked it, but at least you understood it. Oh, you're a Democrat, is what they're saying. And now the bright blue Harris Walls signs that are cluttering all of the windows, urban apartment windows, and so on and so forth, they're being asked the question, or they should be being asked the questions, things like, what about Kamala's word salads that inspire you the most? Do you hate Jews and Christians and unborn babies that much, or are you just blindly following Travis Kelce's girlfriend? Pointing out Taylor Swift. What about the Biden-Harris presidency has been good for you exactly? More fundamentally, and at the risk of sounding mean, just the question, are you stupid? Yep. Well, yep. So, apparently, you know, obviously the regime voters don't care. So basically what we're looking at is Harris supporters, at least according to this person in the piece, is that Harris supporters seem to be two separate camps. Camp number one is, of course, the ones that are so consumed by hatred of Donald Trump. And believe me, I know a few of these folks, but they're so consumed by the hatred of Donald Trump that they would elect a dirty sock. They wouldn't care whether it was Kamala Harris or some other inanimate object. The second one is the one that's the more dangerous in my mind. Those ones are the vibe seekers, the suburban moms who felt kind of pissed or sad when Roe v. Wade was overturned, even though smart people know that never should have been in place. The other folks are like white college students who wear masks, still wear masks, people who say words like ally and equity unironically, and simps with gender studies degrees who love Tim Walz because he is so relatable. Yeah, those are the ones that are voting. And so those people also are the ones where it really doesn't matter, both camps, by the way, really doesn't matter whether Kamala Harris can actually handle friendly interviews or not, or that her whole personality is based upon the color of her skin, or that she's not smart, she's not articulate, she's not even likable. According to them, no matter what, she is brat, she is joyful, she is speaking, and she exists in the context of all in which she lives, what came before her. Democrats have gone ahead and fallen in line. Yeah. So, once again, folks, we're dealing with people who, and this is why I say only morons vote Democrat today. That's it. It's only morons who vote Democrat. They're the ones that are like so enamored with, for whatever reason, which, you know, none of this ever makes sense to me, is that, none of this other makes sense to me as to why they hate Donald Trump so much. I mean, they are like, so you hate a guy, literally, you hate a man who you're never going to meet. I mean, if you do, okay, but you're never really going to meet him. He is doing things good for the country. You know that he did good for the country. He was in office for 4 years and did things that, even with all of the resistance that was put out there, but even with all that resistance, he still got things accomplished that benefited everyone, regardless of what you think. For example, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which took care of everyone from the top to the bottom in terms of tax cuts. Everybody got one. And the biggest one, of course, being in the middle class. That was like 2 or 3% bigger than any of the other classes received. And yet, for whatever reason, it's because he's, I don't know, a misogynist, or, he said that he grabbed women's, nether regions or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But then to jump onto the bandwagon and not realize that what you have in his opponent right now is probably the most leftist ever, the most progressive team ever. And realistically, I would even hazard a guess that she's even more stupid than Joe Biden was or is. Yeah, I don't understand this. Well, there's a bit of a silver lining here, not by much, but a little bit of one. And that is the fact that not very many people are actually believing the shtick that Kamala Harris is going to be the hope and change. Not even hope, but that the change that everybody wants. Here, there was a poll put together by ABC News, Ipsos. Oh, here, let me go ahead and show you. So here it is, ABC News, just so you realize I'm not doing this out of, a right-leaning article. This is a left-leaning article here. Quote, headline, headline, voters question Harris' pitch as an agent of change, according to the poll. So Vice President Kamala Harris's positioning as a change agent is running into what they're calling headwinds from her role in the unpopular Biden administration. Now, remember, keep in mind, Biden has been saying to people, especially recently, that, oh yeah, Kamala Harris has been involved in every single decision that I've made, that, she's been involved and intimately knowledgeable about everything, all of our policy decisions and everything else. She is right there with me. She's the last person in the room, kind of thing. Well, apparently that message is actually resonating with people, because even though 3/4 of Americans in this new ABC News Ipsos poll want her to take a new direction from President Joe Biden, most of them don't think that she actually would. Now, here's the poll. You can see it right here. Let me see. Let me zoom in. Yeah, okay. I can't zoom in because it's a little too big. But here's the preferences versus the expectations. Now, the preferences are in blue, and the expectations are in purple in this graph. Now, the preferences from Harris, most people, 74%, want a new direction from her. But yet only 33% actually expect that she's going to provide that new direction. Now, conversely, from Trump, 53% want a new direction, so roughly 21% less want a new direction from Trump. And only 33%, ironically the same percentage, believe that Trump is actually going to change his direction. I'm here to tell you, he's not going to change his direction. And he really shouldn't, because it was successful in his first 4 years, and it will be successful again. in his next 4 years when he gets elected president in 2024. That's right. So apparently the American people, for the most part, desire to have a change, but they understand that neither one of them are really going to change. So if that is the case, if they fully expect, if these people fully expect that Kamala Harris nor Donald Trump is actually going to change or provide the change that they are looking for, then why, I ask, would you vote for Kamala Harris? Because right now, the non-change that she has been behind is going to just sink us. It's going to sink us as a country. Now, here's some alignment numbers on preferences and expectations, by the way. So here, 32% think that Trump will continue on previous policies and actually want him to. So that's close to a third of the respondents. Another 22% think that Trump will actually go in a new direction and want him to. But the net total of that, of course, is 54%. Now, Harris, on the other hand, 18% think that Harris will continue Biden's policies and still actually want her to. However, 29% think that she will go in a new direction and actually want her to. So why the disconnect here? If you don't think that your candidate is going to provide the change that you're looking for, why would you vote for them? If you think that your candidate isn't going to provide that change, why would you vote for them? Why would you vote for them? Now, there's some numbers that came in, which this is nothing at all surprising for those who are of the Republican or conservative flavor, but preferences for previous policies by party. How many people want Harris to continue Biden's policies? Democrats are only registering at 36%. That's just a little over a third of Democrats actually want Harris to continue Biden's policies. And this is what I'm talking about. If you're a Democrat and you are not one of the 36%, if you're one of the roughly two-thirds of Democrats that do not want Harris to continue with Biden's policies, why the hell would you vote for her? Now, conversely, on the same question with Trump, only 27% want Trump to continue with his previous policies. But still, that 27, that's pretty damn close to 36%. That's not that far away. That's only 9-point difference. And you're telling me that your choice, that you're choosing to go to Harris, even though you know by a close to two-thirds margin that she's going to continue with Biden's policies? Yeah, that doesn't sound like a highly intelligent individual who is attempting to make a choice of a vote. Now, on the same vein, Republicans, 14% want Harris to continue Biden's policies. Where did they get those 14% of Republicans? Those aren't Republicans. I'm going to tell you that right now. But anyway, 65% actually want Trump to continue his previous policies. I'm definitely one of those. I want him to continue with his policies. I actually want him to go a little bit further. That's why I'm advocating for us to get a Republican Senate and a Republican House of Representatives so that we can actually reverse a lot of the damaging policies that this leftist, Marxist-driven, socialist-driven administration has put forth. Now, independents, and this is the key, Remember, Republicans and Democrats are probably going to vote along party lines. No surprises there. But independents, 19% of independents in this poll, okay? 19% only want Harris to continue with Biden's policies. They don't like it. Independents don't like Biden's policies. And yet 40% of those same independents would want Trump to continue with his previous policies. That's a little over double the number of independents would actually want Trump to continue. So this is an indication, folks, that we could be looking at a bunch of independents. A bunch of independents might be sliding over to the Trump camp. So, yeah. Okay. Well, as far as that goes, I keep mentioning with regards to oh, sorry, I've got something a little bit further on that. That wasn't the well, actually, let me go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. With regards to the idea that that Trump will have support of Republicans in the Senate and possibly the House of Representatives. Well, the New York Times, according to this hot air piece, says, yep, the Republicans are going to win the Senate. So the New York Times has a new poll out today. New York Times has a new poll out today, which pretty much confirms kind of what we already knew, which is the fact that the Senate is about to turn red, and there doesn't seem to be any real hope for the Democrats to change that at this point. They say in the piece, in the New York Times piece, control of the Senate appears likely to flip from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party this fall. As one of the nation's most endangered Democrats, Senator Jon Tester of Montana trails his Republican challenger in his bid for re-election, according to a new poll from the New York Times and Siena College. Mr. Tester, who first won election in the Senate in 2006, is winning over moderate and independent voters and running far ahead of the Democrat at the top of the ticket, Vice President Kamala Harris. Okay, you can't really compare those two. I don't even know why I would bother. But anyway, as of now, that does not appear to be enough to survive in Montana, a conservative state where former President Donald Trump is ahead by 17 percentage points and where control of the Senate hangs in the balance. Tim Sheehy, a wealthy Republican businessman and former Navy SEAL who has never held public office, leads Mr. Tester 52% to 44%, according to the poll. Mr. Sheehy's lead is a 7-point advantage without rounding. So just with this one, we could end up with 51% in that. So anyway, that's where this looks possible. And let's see. So with the narrow lead, and this is in the hot air piece, with the narrow lead the Democrats currently have in the Senate, they can only afford to lose one seat if they win the White House. That seat is in West Virginia, where Joe Manchin is retiring. Looks like it's going to be a given. That means that the looming Tester's loss is the ball game unless Democrats can flip a GOP seat somewhere else. Now, the only two places, apparently, that might seem remotely possible here are in Texas and Florida, but a new poll released today had bad news for the Dems on both fronts. In Florida, Senator Rick Scott is leading his opponent by 9 points, and in Texas, Senator Ted Cruz is leading his Democratic challenger by 4 points, 48 to 44. So unless we get a really nasty October surprise in one of those races, they're claiming this is over. Now, this is from the New York Times, okay? The New York Times Siena poll that just came out with regards to this. So the Senate looks like it might end up and has a good chance of ending up into the Republicans' side. So assuming that that's the case, that's one house out of the 3 places that we need to gather that might come back into our control. So I know that Ted Cruz is running a very, very hard race. They are pumping. I mean, Chuck Schumer wants to get rid of Ted Cruz completely, and he has been pushing and pushing and pushing money into Texas to try and get Ted Cruz out of that. So, yeah, we're just going to have to watch those races. And again, everything seems to be tight. Yeah. So we'll see what happens here. Tommy is, of course, pointing out, now she's in Texas, but Tommy is pointing out, I guarantee Cruz has a lot more than 4 points ahead. Those poll takers do not call anyone on the red side of the ticket. Well, that seems to be a common problem across the board, Tommy, which is part of the reason why we have, so many wild polls from one day to the next. There's no like consistency or normalcy, I should say, in any of this. All right. Let me take a quick break and tell you about this wonderful patriotic shirt company run by a veteran. They have some fantastic patriotic wear. You can see it right here on me. I'm wearing the We the People Liberty Bell cotton men's polo shirt right here on the program from theflagshirt.com. That's right, theflagshirt.com. They have all kinds of patriotic styles available for men, women, children, as well as a bunch of accessories that are all decked out in the famous and wonderful, beautiful red, white, and blue. They are fantastic. And you should go and check them out at theflagshirt.com. Like I said, it is a veteran-run organization. And they have a fantastic select set of styles. And if you buy $75 or more, they will give you free shipping. But I know people can't afford $75 of product much these days. So I am helping you guys out. I'm going to help you guys out by giving you a $5 off coupon code to enter in at checkout at theflagshirt.com. To get that promo code, all you have to do is head to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. That's flagshirt.americanperspective.online to get yourself a coupon code that you enter in at checkout at theflagshirt.com to get yourself $5 off your order on me. Head on over to flagshirt.americanperspective.online to get that coupon code to enter in at checkout at theflagshirt.com and get $5 off your order. I really would like you to check out their styles and their shirts and styles. They've got t-shirts. They also have hoodies and pullovers and 3/4 zips and all kinds of stuff. Head on over to theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized. All right. Well, you remember that story that came out where Donald Trump went ahead and was saying that the Presidential Medal of Freedom was better than the Medal of Honor? And he was taken out of context, of course. I'm not saying anything about it. I talked to you about it on this program. I told you what he was meaning, what he meant. And you remember how the left was saying, oh my gosh, if you're a veteran, you should be pissed off about this. You should be mad about this. And you should not want that man to end up in office ever again. And as I've pointed out on this program on multiple occasions, that if you are a veteran who still honors their oath of office to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and to swear an allegiance to the same, you will never vote for Kamala Harris. You will never vote for the Democrats because they're the ones that are assaulting the Constitution. They are the ones that are not supporting and defending the Constitution like their oaths state. But now you would think that Medal of Honor winners might be a little pissed off if they thought that Donald Trump was actually meaning something about that. Those comments that he made. Well, guess what? They don't. Here in Fox News, we believe in Donald Trump. More than a dozen Medal of Honor recipients are endorsing the former president. The Medal of Honor recipients served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and in Vietnam. More than a dozen Congressional Medal of Honor recipients endorsed the former president for the 2024 presidential race. They say, and here's the letter right here. You can get it off this link. I put the link in the description of the video, of the videos, and it's all right here. They say, we, 15 recipients of the Medal of Honor, having served this great nation in wars, support and endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States, they wrote. The recipients include those who have served in Iraq and Vietnam. Here's what some of the letter states. We believe that American citizenship is a revered privilege. We believe that a patriotic nation is a strong nation. We believe that the sacrifices by the men and women in our armed forces preserves and protects Americans' freedom. We believe that the integrity of our institutions is fundamental to the trust placed in them. We believe in the commitment, the United States Constitution, we believe in the commitment to the United States Constitution and our solemn oaths to protect it. We believe valor is great fortitude when faced with profound adversity. We believe in the devoted Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. We believe that American veterans should be celebrated and supported by our nation. We believe that our nation must have borders secure from our enemies. We believe in protecting the rights of all citizens to participate in free and fair elections. We believe fabricating military service is beneath the dignity of a veteran and demeaning to those who have served honorably in the armed forces. Side note, gee, I wonder what that statement is directed at. It continues. We believe the enemies of freedom must be defeated. We believe the American flag is a powerful symbol of freedom. We believe the United States of America is the greatest nation the world has ever imagined. We believe in mutually pledging to every American our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Finally, we believe in Donald Trump. And of course, it continues. You can go and take a look at this. It's 3 pages long. It has the lists of the people who signed on and the links of publicly available information about those 15 Medal of Honor recipients. It's all there in the piece. This is the America that we need. This is the America that we need to foster. This is the America that Donald J. Trump will bring back once elected President of the United States. All right. So, they even called it out in the piece. In an apparent swipe at Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the recipient said that they believe that fabricating military service is beneath the dignity of a veteran and demeaning to those who have served honorably in the armed forces. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, guys. That was Angus, my dog, letting me know that somebody had come home. Anyway, so there you go. I mean, 15 Medal of Honor recipients have apparently decided that Trump's comments about the Medal of Honor are not that big of a deal. He probably didn't even mean it. No, he didn't. He didn't mean it the way that everybody was taking it, because, of course, the left takes everything out of context when it comes to Donald Trump. They always do. They always do. It's not even a question. They'll take a small little snippet of his words and leave out the context and the continuing, the outside words that would go along with it that would provide a much better description as to what he was talking about and who he was referring to. Yeah, I'm sorry about the dog. I'm his emotional support human, so he can't leave my side. Unless, of course, somebody comes home, in which case then he barks and goes off. Anyway, so I apologize for that. All right. Well. Yes, buddy, I have a question for tonight. But before we get to that, of course, I really want to cover something that happened. It happened a while ago. I mentioned it. I said, that Jack Smith reared his ugly head, but there was a piece that was put together. And before I do that, before I even talk about the piece, because there is another potential drop here by Chutkin. These people want to interfere in our elections. Holy crap, they just do. So here in the Epic Times, Chutkin is apparently going to release more of Smith's quote-unquote evidence, which, by the way, none of that actually is evidence. It's just Smith basically spewing a whole bunch of stuff, saying that he can, what he thinks he can prove. But apparently what is going to happen is Chutkin is planning on releasing more of Smith's evidence over objections from Trump's legal team, a legal team which says that Smith's evidence so far has been unlawfully cherry-picked and mischaracterized. So Chutkin said in an order on October 10th, now keep in mind today's October 12th, so October 10th, that she would release more of the special counsel Jack Smith's quote-unquote evidence, writing that former President Donald Trump's concerns about the political consequences of doing so lacked legal merit. Really? Her order granted Smith's request to release a redacted version of the appendix to the original 165-page immunity brief that he released on October 2nd. Now, for whatever reason, Chutkin delayed the release of the appendix for 7 days after her October 10th order so that Trump could evaluate his litigation options, bringing the release date to just under 3 weeks before the 2024 presidential election. Do you think, maybe, just possibly, that this judge and this unconstitutionally appointed jackass, Jack Smith, I think that's what I'm going to call him from now on. It's Jackass Smith. Anyway, this guy, do you think that they are planning on they're doing this in order to try and present a quote unquote October surprise on Donald Trump? Do you think that's what they're attempting to do here? So on October 10th also, she unsealed the filing in which Trump's attorneys opposed to the release of any additional evidence while accusing Smith of actual election interference. The filing read, there should be no further disclosures at this time of the so-called evidence that the special counsel's office has unlawfully cherry-picked and mischaracterized during early voting in the 2024 presidential election in connection with an improper presidential immunity filing that has no basis in criminal procedure or judicial precedent, the filing reads. So her order described Trump's blanket objections to further unsealing as without merit. She stated that his concern about political consequences is not a cognizable legal prejudice. Actually, there is precedent for this. There is precedent for this. And there's a brilliant piece that I've been holding on to, but it's apropos for the latest announcement of the further release of further bullshit from Jack Smith. But here in the New York Intelligencer, and this was written October 3rd, right after the October 2nd release of the 165-page document, and this is written by Eli Honig. Now, who is Eli Honig, you ask? Well, he actually is a counselor from Lowenstein Sandler, a part of White Collar Defense in New Jersey and New York. Now, I don't know anything about the guy's political leanings, but I believe he's no friend of the Republicans. But he is a former New Jersey and federal prosecutor with extensive experience leading and managing criminal trials and appeals. Eli Honig provides strategic advice to individuals and businesses in government-facing investigations, as well as counsel on internal investigations. Prior to joining the firm, Eli, however it's pronounced, served as director of the Department of Law and Public Safety in the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice, where he directed major criminal cases against street gangs, drug trafficking organizations, illegal firearms traffickers, corrupt public officials, child predators, and white-collar offenders, etc., etc., etc. You can grab and take a look. You can grab that and take a look at the rest of his bio, but let's just put it this way. He's kind of a smart guy and at least lists his potential experience here. But he writes in the New York Intelligencer about Jackass Smith's October cheap shot. And he points out in here that there are a couple of things that really speak loudly about this. First of all, the immediate takeaway lies in the revelations that were contained in Smith's oversized brief. Now, again, keep in mind, this is not a Republican-leaning individual. All right? But here's the thing, is that the guy, meaning Smith, asked for a brief that was 180 pages long, 4 times the normal maximum. Now, if you think Judge Chutkan is not in the pocket of the Democrats here and looking to go and, attack the Republicans, in particular Donald Trump, and try to get rid of him, you're sorely mistaken. This is just one example. But the larger, he calls out, less obvious headline is that Smith has essentially abandoned any pretense. He'll bend any rule, switch up any practice, as long as he gets to chip away at Trump's electoral prospects. At this point, there's simply no defending Smith's conduct on any sort of principled or institutional basis. Now, he points out some of the problems. Problem number 1, this is backwards. He's saying that the way motions work under the federal rules and consistent with common sense is that the prosecutor files an indictment. The defense makes motions to dismiss charges, to suppress evidence, whatever. And then the prosecution responds to those motions. Okay? I think that actually kind of makes sense. And he claims that it's worked for hundreds of years in our courts. Not here, he says, not when there's an election right around the corner and a dwindling opportunity to make a dent. So Smith turned the well-established, thoroughly uncontroversial rules of criminal procedure on their head and asked Judge Chutkan for permission to file first, even with no actual defense motion pending. And that's the key point. Trump's team objected, and what's worse is that the judge acknowledged that Smith's request to file first was procedurally irregular, but she went ahead and did it anyway. Now, if you don't think that this woman is in the pocket of the Democrats and trying to sink Trump before he gets elected, you are really on the wrong side of this. But now, Smith's proactive, this is a second point here that Eli is, or Mr. Honig is making. Smith's proactive filing is prejudicial to Trump legally and politically. It's ironic. Smith has complained throughout the case that Trump's words might taint the jury pool. And accordingly, the special counsel requested a gag order that was so preposterously broad that even Judge Chutkan slimmed it down considerably. And the Court of Appeals, of course, narrowed it even further than that. Yet, now Smith is using grand jury testimony, which ordinarily remains secret at this stage, and drafts up this 165-page document that contains all manner of damaging statements about a criminal defendant, made outside of a trial setting and without being subjected to the rules of evidence or cross-examination. Keep in mind, a grand jury, when a grand jury is convened, and I'm diverging from the article here for a second, when a grand jury is convened, there is no defense of the charges. Essentially what happens is the prosecution lays out their case. The grand jury is supposed to look at the prosecution's case and decide, is there enough evidence to actually have a trial? And those 12 people on that grand jury decide essentially either a thumbs up or thumbs down, not guilt or innocence, but whether or not there is enough evidence that means that they should proceed to an actual trial, that the indictment is valid based on the evidence that's there. Well, obviously, that grand jury testimony may have information that the prosecution is planning on using at a later date during the trial, but it's very rare for any of the grand jury testimony to actually be placed out in public like this, if at all. And that's what he's calling out. So, again, keep in mind, all of these allegations are without any kind of defense being allowed, no explanations, no reasonable doubt, none of that has been allowed here. It's basically just the prosecution saying, this is what I think I can prove. That's it. So anyway, he continues here that says the final point on this is that Smith's conduct here violates core DOJ principles and policies. He says the Justice Manual, which is the DOJ's internal Bible, essentially contains a section titled Actions That May Have an Impact on the Election. Guess what, folks? They have it right here. It's right here. Oh my gosh. Section 9-85.500, actions that may have an impact on the election. This is from the Department of Justice, stating, quote, federal prosecutors and agents may never select the timing of any action, including investigative steps in criminal charges or statements, for the purposes of affecting any election or for the purpose of giving an advantage or a disadvantage to any candidate or political party. Such a purpose is inconsistent with the department's mission and with the principles of federal prosecution. And then it points to another section. Continues, Any action likely to raise an issue or the perception of an issue under this provision requires consultation with the public integrity section, and such action shall not be taken if the public integrity section advises that further consultation is required with the Deputy Attorney General or the Attorney General. By the way, this was added in August of 2022. Folks, they are literally attempting to do one thing, and that is, of course, to take down Donald Trump. This is obvious election interference, completely obvious. And not only is it obvious on Jack Smith's part, but it's being perpetuated and increased by Judge Chutkan. She's not a fair judge here. If she were, she would be like, no, this stuff, you're keeping it sealed. And that's what Eli Honig was pointing out. This Jack Smith, whether he gets the final say in the trial or not, is doing essentially whatever he can to try and sway Trump voters from actually voting Trump. Now, 3 Chevy actually asks the question, and yeah, it's a legitimate one. Is there no way to appeal this? No, there actually is a way to appeal this. They can appeal decisions like this, but realistically, kind of the damage is already done. Now, all this does too is that Judge Chutkan could very well have added some procedural grounds for this to get overturned once the trial is over and the appeal is put forth. Because essentially by doing it this way, Jackass Smith has now created a tainted jury pool. You don't think that everybody has seen this? The Democrats, and especially keep in mind, this is in D.C., so the chances of a Democrat being on that jury for, 10 out of 12 on that jury, or 90%, is basically 100%, that 90% of the jury is for sure going to be Democrat. There's no way Trump can get a fair trial in D.C., and especially not now. So this whole thing could potentially set up for a situation where you could be looking at a thrown out appeal, that the appeal would throw out the case. Now, Victor Davis Hanson actually calls this out. He called it out on his own podcast, and he issues a dark warning on what Dems might do and this is in the Daily Caller, by the way, if Trump wins in 2024. So he calls out in particular the criminal indictments, and he essentially calls out Smith as out of control. He said, well, Jackass Smith is crazy. He's out of control. He's violated the DOJ's own handbook of ethical behavior, that you don't indict a major political figure, or you don't further a prosecution 90 to 60 days out of an election. He's been disgraced when he went after the Virginia governor, Bob McConnell, and was reversed 9-0 by the Supreme Court for trying to demonize him. So he has a reputation that if you want to destroy a political candidate on the right, you take this Jackass Smith and he'll do anything, anytime, anywhere, and he has no ethics. Hansen continued that, stating that if Trump wins the 2024 presidential election, he believes that Smith will persuade a biased jury. Okay, listen to my words here. He will persuade a biased jury. I just told you that D.C., there is a very low chance that you're going to run across a Republican. Even if you could get one on the jury would be amazing. But Smith will persuade a biased jury to convict Trump. He also claimed that if Trump were jailed, so if he's jailed prior to taking over in January, assuming that all of this can happen in that short period of time, he predicts that Vice President Kamala Harris will invoke the 25th Amendment against Joe Biden, allowing her to assume the presidency. He's calling this out. Now, I personally think it's going to be a little tight to try and do that between November and January, but you never know. So he continues on and he says, so yeah, I think, as I said, I'm really worried about a scenario in which Donald Trump wins the Electoral College, Kamala Harris wins the popular vote, but loses the presidency. Jackass Smith then indicts and convicts, I should say, with a biased jury, Donald Trump and tries to put him into jail. Joe Biden is now a doddering old fool, and she sometime late November, December calls for the 25th Amendment and she becomes president, Hansen said. She says, I won the popular vote. He's in jail. And the Constitution, of course, would say at that point, of course, that J.D. Vance, well, he actually continued. Now, keep in mind, I'm quoting Victor Davis Hansen here. He says, well, it wouldn't even say it. There's nothing in the Constitution that says he can't be in jail and be president, which is true. He can't. I mean, he can be. There's nothing in it that says that he can't be in jail. Hansen then continues and says, but if there were some kind of weird court willing and there's still J.D. Vance was elected to vice president and he could possibly serve a month or two until Trump got out. And then he continues with, but I don't think they would do that. How many people think that these people have absolutely no ethics, no integrity, no morals, no standards, that they would attempt to do some shit like this? Yeah. So, it's not just me. I'm not the only one thinking this Jackass Smith is crazy. But, yeah, so Chutkin is definitely on the party side and is not following this. So essentially right now, Trump's attorneys have until November 7th to file a reply to Smith's filing. And then that gives Smith until November 21st to respond to their objections. And all of this is according to ABC News. Folks, I'm telling you, they're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to pull out everything they possibly can to eliminate the possibility of Trump actually winning in 2024. They're doing this. The shenanigans are going to be, enhanced, expanded, amplified, whatever kind of adjective that you want to add to this thing. They're going to get worse. We're under 30 days. We're over 20, but under 30. And it's going to amplify up until November 5th. And it's going to get even worse after November 5th. Be prepared. That's all I'm saying, is be prepared. All right. I've got a little bit of a complex question for whiskey for tonight. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Here's the question of the week. I keep calling it question for whiskey because that's what it was on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. I keep throwing that off. But anyway, tonight's question comes from the venerable, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-wise Buddy Weiser from over on Rumble. Buddy writes, Greetings, my friend. I hope this note finds you well and with a stout spirit this day. I know you already don't like it. Whatever. Anyway, here we go. Knowing your penchant or perchant, okay, knowing your perchant for a historical inquiry, I give you these questions. Would you please tell us about the Battle of Lepanto in 1571 and 3 important facts about the event? Thanks, Buddy Weiser. All right, buddy. I have to admit, I hadn't heard about this, so I had to research, but let me tell you, this battle, along with another battle, by the way, is very crucial to the expansion, or I should say, the stopping of the expansion of the Ottoman Empire. And so that is your first fact. This is credited with being the first or being one of 2 battles that were key and crucial in slowing, retarding, and eventually reversing the expansion of the Ottoman Empire. So there's fact one. So the Battle of Lepanto, just for everybody else's knowledge, was a naval engagement off the waters of what is southwestern Greece between the Allied Christian forces known as the Holy League and the Ottoman Turks during an Ottoman campaign that they were attempting to acquire the island of Cyprus. Okay. Now, the battle itself marked the first significant victory for a Christian naval force over the Turkish fleet and was a climax in the age of gallery warfare in the Mediterranean. All right. So Venice itself, which Venice had Cyprus as its, it was its control of its island. And Venice had attempted by itself to check the Ottoman expansion into the Eastern Mediterranean until about the year of 1540. But unfortunately, they ran out of support. They were exhausted. They made a peace contract with, Suleiman the First, and his successor, Selim II, was determined to go ahead and get that outpost in the case of the island of Cyprus. When the Venetians failed, or refused, I should say, to let go of the island, he went ahead and invaded it in 1570. Now, one thing you have to remember is back then, especially in Europe, Europe had the religious leaders were also the political leaders. And so Pope Pius V was attempting to form an alliance between Roman Catholic states. The idea, of course, was to bring them together so that they could stop things from occurring like the Ottoman Empire. Now, for those of you that may not know, the Ottoman Empire was, of course, made up of Muslims, okay? And they were trying to attempt to take over the world, as is predicted, requested, pushed for, whatever, in the Quran, all right? Now, France and the rest of the Holy Roman Empire were preoccupied with a whole bunch of sweeping changes that were happening in the religious realm, being wrought by what was called the Reformation in the same time. Now, Spain potentially offered some hope to Pius V, but unfortunately, Philip II, who was in charge of Spain at the time, had an empty treasury. He ran out of money and was faced with revolts that were going on in Andalusia, which was a territory of theirs, as well as the Netherlands, which were territories of Spain at the time. Venice was also unhappy with and distrusted Spanish influence in Italy. But Pius was committed to bringing Spain, Venice, and some other smaller Italian states together into an alliance with himself. Now, during all of this, okay, the Turks had gone and captured a town, Nicosia, on Cyprus on September 9th in 1570. And they then continued on to another town, laying siege to it and entering what is known as the Adriatic Sea. Now, in May 25th of 1571, the Pope finally persuaded Spain and Venice to agree to terms of an offensive and defensive alliance. Think of it as sort of like a NATO in the Mediterranean. So then a guy by the name of Don Juan de Austria, who is Philip's young half-brother, was to me the commander-in-chief of the force. And the general, Marcantonio, wow, that's a heck of a name, Marcantonio Colonna was going to be his lieutenant. So these are the two guys that are going to be in charge of all this. So the fleets assembled in Sicily and waited until August 24th, 1571 for the Spaniards to come join them. The combined fleets then sailed on September 16th for Corfia, where they learned that the other town, one of the towns on Cyprus, had fallen, and the Turkish fleet was moving forward in the Gulf of Patrikos near Lepanto in Greece. And Lepanto has now been renamed to Navapakos. Anyway, so they were to engage the fleets on October 7th. Now, estimates of the fleet, of course, vary. So I can't really tell you how many there were there, but there were a lot of galleys, meaning large ships. There were several of these, and they were all, many of them actually, or all of them were oar propelled. So they had, people rowing them, essentially. They hadn't quite gotten into sailing yet. Now, the Turkish force itself was said to be much larger, but unfortunately wasn't quite as well equipped and not quite as well disciplined. So anyway, battle ensues. The Christian fleet advanced in 4 different squadrons, and they ended up defeating the Turks by taking out, what was it here? So let's see. The Allies, which again, these were the Christians, captured 117 ships, thousands of men, liberated 15,000 enslaved Christians, sank or burned about 50 other ships, and they themselves only lost 12 galleys and only had about 8,000 wounded. The battle was completely remarkable, according to historians, and was the greatest engagement, or is deemed as the greatest engagement with oar-propelled vessels, and the first noted victory, great victory, over the Turkish fleet. Now, unfortunately, while the battle was won, the war was eventually lost. Cyprus did fall to the Turks later, and Venice made peace in 1573 by handing over the Cyprus to the Turks. But the battle itself had little to do or little impact on the Ottoman expansion, except for the fact that it was a great, shall we say, uplifting of the motivation, the morale of the Europeans at the time. And it apparently has been the subject of many paintings that are out there now about it. And even a ballad by G.K. Chesterton is also as a part of it. So while the Turks won overall, that was actually, according to historians too, that battle and one other battle previous to it in 1565 were the signals of the downfall of the Ottoman Empire. It's also been surmised that if the Christians had not beaten the Turks in 1571 at this battle, that we very well, many of us today, would very well be Muslim rather than Christian in our religious base. So this was a significant battle that took place that changed essentially the course of history for the Ottoman Empire. Hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Buddy Weiser. And I thank you for submitting that. If you would like to get your question answered here on the question of the week, all you need to do is send me an email, same email address, fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online with your question, and I will go ahead and do the research for you and hopefully answer the question that you propose. All right, folks, that is it for me. I'm a little over time, but I do appreciate you hanging out. So that is it for me. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are there, make sure that you find and follow the American Perspective channel. Also, too, don't forget to hit that thumbs up or the like buttons every outlet that I have, because that, of course, brings up the ratings for these videos and allows me to increase my exposure. We will see you Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great Sunday, and we will see you on Monday. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.